Muy buenos días. Good morning. Welcome, everyone. I hope you are well. Focus on what you can control. Bienvenidos. My name is Patricia Mota. I'm currently serving as President and CEO of HACE, the Hispanic Alliance for Career Enhancement, national nonprofit organization whose mission is to positively impact workplaces by cultivating the pipeline of Latino talent and providing Latinos the insight, access, and development to be successful in their careers. Quick thing, please visit our website. If you are new to the HACE Familia, go to haceonline.org. And if you've been part of the Familia, please submit your story. We want to hear from you. Go to our website. And we have a special guest today who has an awesome story to share with us today. Bienvenido, good morning, Emmanuel Lopez, who is the Bilingual Recruiting Specialist at Governor State University. And that's just one of many titles Emmanuel has. But bienvenido, ¿cómo estás?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here, Patricia. This is exciting for me.
We're so excited to have you for so many reasons, but Emmanuel, you were a former intern, I don't even remember how many years ago exactly, at HACE, and so it's so good to see you, to have stayed in touch with HACE, and to see your trajectory, and so we're excited to get to know more about your story and your experience across the last couple years. But being bienvenido a Cafecito con HACE, our first question for our guests is always, how do you prefer your cafecito, your morning beverage of choice?
Sure, and being completely authentic here, Patricia, I don't even drink coffee like that. I love agua. I love water. That's my one. I'm not the type of person who needs I never got into the coffee thing. For me, maybe because I have too much energy from the beginning, so I don't need any more of that. But water has always been my beverage of choice to start my day.
Wonderful. That's a great thing. We've had not too many, but a handful of our non-coffee drinkers. But water, this is the first time we've gotten water. We've gotten, Dr. Pepper, maybe some other type. But water, that's good because that's the best thing you can drink throughout the day. And I know many of us have the goal to drink more and more water, right, to make sure that we're staying hydrated, especially during the summer months. Emmanuel, one of the things with all of our listeners, and thank you all for joining us, tuning in, please share your comments, your questions, as we engage in our conversation with Emmanuel today. But Emmanuel, tell us about your career trajectory, your background. For those of us tuning in, it's always critical that we get to hear these stories.
Sure. So I'm, identify as Mexican American. My parents are from a small town called Arandas, Jalisco, in Mexico, not that far from Guadalajara. I was born here in Harvey, Illinois. So that's a little bit about where I've been, kind of the location wise. But in terms of my professional trajectory, gosh, Lee, the last 6 years, Patricia, have been packed. Right. It took me 2 years to get my associate's degree, and then it took me 2 years to get my bachelor's from Indiana University Northwest. And then it took me 2 years to get my master's in educational leadership from Northeastern Illinois University's LASSET program. And in those 6 years, it's been school back to back, right? Fall, spring, summers. So there's been no breaks, no summer breaks for me. So it's been busy. It's been good. In terms of my professional trajectory, it's been in higher education, and I never growing up, no one really talks about, going to higher education. I think coming from a Latino background, it's always like 3 options, it seems like, right? Doctor, nurse, or lawyer, or some of those 3. But I fell in love with it. My mentors really, I saw the work that they did. I loved it, and I wanted to contribute that. I think especially as more and more Latinos are going into higher education, we need more folks like ourselves, Patricia, to be in the system to help them through.
Yeah, that's great. And I think this is going to be a wonderful catapult for the future of your career trajectory as well. But having started in my career in higher education as well, that's where we got to, and I know you're doing this because that's what I got to experience as well, is you become that role model for the Latino students, right? And their go-to for their families, for questions, everything, right? And so I know how impactful that role and what you're doing for our families, especially since more and more Latinos are going into, pursuing higher education, and especially looking, looking for financial options, looking for scholarship resources. But most importantly, people like you, I think, is super critical when they can relate with someone at the university, the college. Is super, super powerful. So I love hearing that. And now, speaking of, our college students, our young professionals, and kudos to you. I mean, you just talked about going from associate to bachelor's to graduate in a span, and for sticking through, because we all know that pursuing higher education is a tough journey, and it's getting tougher, right? And so for our young professionals tuning in, or even recent grads, what advice do you have for them as they're getting ready to launch their career?
Gosh, that's a great question. And I think there's no right answer, right? That's such a, there's so many answers to that. But what I would say that I feel like has helped my trajectory in higher education and to do other things, speaking opportunities, has been, to really frame the question of, when people ask me, what's my full-time job? What do I do for a living? I say, oh, I'm a full-time bilingual recruiting specialist at Governor State University, but I'm also a part-time brand ambassador to myself, Patricia. Like, I understand that, like, as a first-generation low-income student, there's no one building our network but I had to do that, right? I had to build my own network. So I always viewed, that area of being visible, thinking about myself as a brand, as a part-time job. No matter what job I have for the next 30 years, Patricia, I will always say my part-time job is to be a brand ambassador to myself, being visible, updating my professional headshot, always educating myself, through certificates, any type of education that I could get. Posting on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is underrated. I think there's not enough Latinos using LinkedIn. And my God, I've gotten job offers from LinkedIn just from being visible. Like, hey, I saw that you were doing this, right? And it can be exhausting to create content. But you know what I have been doing, Patricia? I've been documenting my journey, right? I'm not creating content. I'm documenting my journey. Hey, I did this, right? Because if you're not visible, you could be the best candidate, Patricia. But if you're not visible, then you're not going to be on the person's mind. They're not going to reach out for you for an opportunity, right? So visibility is key. Be visible. Please be visible. And then also understand that you might have a timeline in your head, Patricia, but God's timing is a whole other thing, right? So keep pushing forward, and the things will come. The things will come. Like, for example, when I applied to that HACE internship, I did not get it the first time, Patricia. I did not get it. But then I was patient. I'm like, you know what? The next time it comes around, I will apply again, right? And I got it the second time, right? Because I really wanted to do it. So be resilient.
That's awesome. Be persistent. And you talked a lot about LinkedIn. Not only did you say there's not enough Latinos, there's not enough also college students on there, right? And I think the ones that we have seen, where we were encouraging our college students to get involved, set up your profile, make sure you're active, especially with the pandemic and the virtual environment, right? Where else could we go and really showcase our work? Another key thing that you mentioned that I think is super, super critical is that first and foremost, you have to be the CEO of Me Incorporated. I think that's one of famous brand ambassadors, William Arruda, that states that, is you have to do that first and foremost. So how are you ensuring that you're being accountable, you're ensuring you're showcasing your accomplishments, and that you're being visible? So a little easier for some of us than others, but I'm loving all the comments. Thank you, Anita. We had another comment with all of the great energy that Emmanuel has and all of the great tips that he's sharing. I do want to flip the question, Emmanuel, and we'll open it up for those of you tuning in. Please have your questions, your comments ready. We want to hear from you all. We do have a lot of HACE employer partners that tune in, right? We have various professionals that are tuning in, but also those that are currently looking to hire talent such as yourself. Those are, up and coming, those that have achieved so much, that are resilient, that are, tienen ganas, right? And we just need that opportunity. What advice do you have for employers that are hiring and looking to connect with young talent?
That's a tough question. I think for me, I think appreciation of authenticity, right? I think that's so important. Like every time I've been interviewed, Patricia, I always show up the same way, and I'm not scared. And sometimes I even introduce myself as Emmanuel Lopez, right? I think just appreciating the authenticity that someone brings is number one. right? Because I know for one, if you're interviewing someone, especially a young professional, we're nervous, Patricia. I'm a first generation low income student. When it came down to interviewing for salary jobs, Patricia, I'd never done that before. Yeah. My parents have never done that before, right? So I'm the first one to do this. So I best believe that I'm a little bit nervous. And I'm not but I try to always be authentic, answer as best as I possibly can. Appreciate the energy that the person is bringing, because best believe it's not easy for them, right? It was not easy for me, but it took me a bunch of times, right? It took me a bunch of times to feel more comfortable and comfortable. And then, I think asking them questions, I think oftentimes the first question is we're the most nervous, so don't just be like, oh, he didn't answer that first question right that first time. He's going to be a no for us. Ask them more questions, follow up, give them a fair shake at it, right? Because we're going to be nervous at the beginning, but, we really want it. When we apply, we really want this opportunity, right? And we know what we're going to do for our family trajectory, for ourselves. And oftentimes, they might look at our experiences and it might not make sense, right? But we have to work. I've had to work my entire undergraduate and graduate career, right? I always had a part-time job, and sometimes I sold cars while I was in grad school, Patricia. It has nothing to do with higher education, but I needed to do that, right? Yeah. But so appreciating that sometimes we have to hustle a little differently.
Yeah, and really looking, I think what I hear you say there too is seeking the transferable skills, right? Because you went into different industries and you're able to highlight that. And so it's important for not only the candidate to showcase that for themselves, but for the employer to help really hone in on that and asking the questions and understanding. You mentioned the authenticity piece, right, is key. And the other key thing that you're doing, and thank you, Jorge, we had a comment regarding LinkedIn on there for that. The other piece that you mentioned was, well, at least that I can see that you're doing is through your role, you're giving back to community, right? In some sort of way, you're helping other students, you're helping others, that share similar trajectories, similar stories such as yours. And we see that as a trend for employers to really showcase, when you come work for us, this is how we're gonna, this is what we're doing to support the community, or this is what you can do in your role to support the community. So we see that as such a big driver, especially this past year, for employers to do, right? Would you agree with that?
100%. It's the question is, how are you bringing value, right? Yeah. Throughout my entire life, I think I've gotten opportunities because I brought value to someone, right? I made a good impression. I offered to help. I shared a resource. Because people remember that, like you're giving something to them and you're not expecting. I never ask for anything, right? I'm bringing value, and then if an opportunity comes, I might be like, hey, Patricia, could you write me a letter of recommendation? And even then, I don't expect you to do that, Patricia, but it's an ask, like give, and then ask, not give, and then take, right? So I think for me, and then going back to what you mentioned, I'm giving value. I created a little workshop series per se called, Create Your Brand. In which I talked about stuff that I wish I would have learned earlier, right? Building credit. How do you do that? Right? You need a credit card to build credit, but then you don't qualify for a credit card if you don't have credit score. So it's a weird cycle, right? Resume tips, LinkedIn, how to be a leader. I created this workshop by myself, not GSU, not, Emmanuel Lopez created this workshop because I wanted to help students, right? And I think I had 33 students signed up at the national level. I didn't care where we're in Zoom. You could be wherever you want. Come to me, and 33 students signed up, 17 different institutions. And I'm doing them every like 2 weeks, every other Friday. But it's something that it fires me, Patricia. I want to do that. I want to help because I know there's people who are showing up who are just like me, who are going to benefit, right? Who are going to benefit, and that's all I care about.
No, that's great. I have to tell you, haven't worked with you in several years, and I know that who was your manager at the time, who's at HACE as our director of marketing, Vanessa, is smiling right now as she's hearing you speak, because we're so proud, and this is why HACE exists, right? To be able to support our talent as you continue to advance in your career. And I'm loving all the comments too coming in. Thank you, Savian, who's talking about transferable soft skills across all industries on the edge for young professionals to stand out to employees. Great tips and great advice. And you talked a lot about you mentioned the workshop too. So I know we're working with you. You'll be offering some workshops for HACE as well. So excited to have you re-engage in that and being able to offer that for our upcoming prior to our virtual career fair that's taking place for college students in October. And so it's good to reconnect. And so any questions or comments from the group or from those tuning in live, we'll take them now, as we're listening to Emmanuel and his story, anything else you would add while we wait and see if we get a question or two?
Yeah, shout out to Vanessa for reaching out again, and she was crucial to my me coming to HACE, and as a young Mexican American boy, commuting to the city was such a transferable experience to me. I really saw that I could do that. I belong in the city, and that I could adapt to the high pace. So shout out to Vanessa.
Was that your first time coming into the city for an opportunity?
Yeah.
Oh,
and I was scared, Patricia. I was super scared, to go the first in family, have an internship in the city. First in my entire family. I'm like, I'm going here, taking the metro system, and then walking to HACE's headquarters, and at least in Chicago. And it was definitely a character building development type of experience for me.
We hear that so often. I mean, even you talk about our national board chair, Olga Camargo, talks about her first internship coming into the city in the financial district, and now she's an investment fiduciary, right? But talks about her trajectory. And I think that leads to another key point that we encourage, foundations, partners, is what programs out there to ensure that we're taking our youth outside of their neighborhoods, their communities, into cities, into workplaces that could be inspiring, that can help think ahead. And I think you just sharing that is such a perfect example in terms of how impactful that could be. And so that's just amazing. And I think that we need to do more of that for our students. I think we've had a halt, right, with the pandemic, and as us is looking into the coming year, being creative in terms of how we can continue to offer those experiences for our students, so that they get that and that they're inspiring. I have a question in terms of advice for recent grads who are having trouble finding their first post-college position.
That one's hard. I mean, all of these are hard questions, right? But I think for me, the first role, and especially in this market, right? This is a hard market to enter. Let's be real, right? It's COVID. There's a lot of employers who are not hiring, who have hiring freezes. For me, I mean, when I graduated, it was peak COVID, right? So for me personally, it was a little difficult. But I reached out to my network on LinkedIn. I reached out to Amy, who was a cohort member of mine at Enlace, who I know worked at Governor State. And then I was like, hey, market is tough. Do you know any opportunities coming up so that I could apply for? She was like, absolutely. Actually, we do. And I actually know who's hiring that position. She connected us to do an informal informational meeting. I didn't even have to apply. I didn't even have to go through the application process. They didn't like me so much. They were like, we're going to hire you, right? So out of just reaching out to one person, it changed everything, right? It allowed me to kind of find opportunity in a very hard market. So I think for me, when it comes to, reach out to me for, I might have something, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, this is my story. I saw you. Here's where I look. Do you know anybody? And I'll be like, okay, I would at least look for something for you, right? And to see if there's a match for you, right? So reach out for help. Oftentimes I feel like we take pride in self-resilience so much. We don't even want to ask for help, right? I was in high school, Patricia. I didn't want to ask my mentors for help because I'm like, you're the first in my family. You're smart. You got to figure it out yourself. No.
Yeah.
Ask for help. And I promise you, you'll get to your point either way. But by asking for help, you'll get there faster. So let's do the faster route.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. That's an excellent tip. And to your point, especially as, the resilience part, or the humility that is a traditional value that as a community we have, it's like, well, we don't want to ask, or we feel bad. But I think is that more oftentimes than not, right? People want to help, right? People want to, and so whether they don't have the response or the right, connection for you, I'm sure they'll figure out, they'll connect you or help you some sort of way. And that's something that I've always led with too. So I can agree with that 100%. Emmanuel, as we wrap up, and leave us with something that you're most hopeful for going into the end of this year.
Sure. I think I saw this question and I thought of Brandon Moreno. He's a UFC fighter, right? Okay, I'm a big UFC person. He became the first truly Mexican fighter to win a championship recently, okay? But his story is interesting because of this. He was in the UFC and then he got cut, right? And then, his story could have ended there. But then he, in lower circuits, he kept fighting, became a champion at a lower level, got back into the UFC, and then recently became a UFC champion. right? So I think it goes down to you know, really not believing in yourself and not giving up, right? Like I said, your timing and God's timings are differently. He was meant to be a champion, but maybe not the time that he was at the UFC the first time, but the second time he became a champion. And I always go back to you know, one of my favorite soccer players is Chicharito Hernandez. When they were facing Germany, everyone was counting Mexico out, right? But Chicharito kept saying, like, let's imagine like awesome things. Like, hay que imaginarnos cosas chingonas. Like, why not? What do we lose from that, right? Let's imagine. Like, mentality is the strongest piece here. And I do want to ask one of the questions in the chat, because I think it's the best. I mean, it's one of the best questions. They asked about what are your thoughts on why students don't use the career services? That's a great question. I didn't even use the career services, and I was all about professional development. But I think oftentimes we're so shy, and then any small bad experience that we have we're not gonna want to go there again. And I was always waiting for someone to connect me and be like, hey, Emmanuel, you should reach out to this office, and I will introduce you to them, right? I will go there. Yeah. I will take you there, and I will have a meeting, and I'll be like, hey, this is what they do here. And that way I feel like I would have been more comfortable. And that's something that I want to do at GSU. As all of my Latino students, I'm like, hey, I know Darcy Campos, like, who's a director of career services. She's awesome, right? Yeah. I will introduce you and get you started. So that way you feel more comfortable and you do take advantage of career services, because we're paying for it, and it's an awesome, awesome office. Why would we not take advantage of it?
That's an excellent tip. Sometimes it takes whether it's an organization like HACE that our community is comfortable with, or someone like you, right, that's able to direct and make that connection. And the last piece thing, Emmanuel, that you shared with us is the power of a positive and a championship mindset and to keep pushing forward. Thank you, Emmanuel. It's been such a pleasure having you. Felicidades. Congratulations on everything. I'm looking forward to staying in touch. Thank you all for joining us. Hasta la próxima. Take care.